Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia and welcome to another episode of the Ukraine War SITREP. This is the summary for the day of 578 to 579, 577 to 579. Is it correct? Actually I cannot read. Yeah, 577 to 579 for the 23rd to the 25th of September. I was supposed to record the SITREP yesterday, but as I mentioned in the post that I addressed to you guys in Patreon, Coffee, YouTube members, Boosty, whatnot. Basically, yesterday went to the hospital because I sneezed and I injured a muscle on the side of my torso, and that gave me a lot of pain, and I have no choice but to actually go to the hospital and take a look. Yeah, I just take a look. So end up so I have to skip the SITREP yesterday, and yeah, so that's what happened. So anyway, so go down to the SITREP. So let's start off with the Black Sea as usual. In the Black Sea, we have yet another missile strike on the Sevastopol port, and this time around it was yet another success from the Ukrainians, where they managed to hit some stuff. They fired 6, and then the targets were some ships, and then they hit something. The aftermath was not very clear, but these missiles are giving a lot of headaches for the Russian forces. And on top of that, again, this is all again is it's a combined attack kind of thing. The Ukrainian forces landed at a region around Olenivka. So they actually managed to land in the cover of dark. Then they got discovered by the border guards, which then opened fire at the boats. Then they started to shoot at each other, and the Ukrainians retreated. So because the Ukrainians are the aim is not to do amphibious landing, like D-Day in World War II. It's not that case. The aim is just to raid, and so they retreated after being discovered, since they are not going to achieve what they're going to do, and yeah, so they just left. And according to Ryba, they suspect that the ability to do all this landing is probably because the Ukrainians have taken over some of these oil rigs, and this becomes deployment sites for the Ukrainians from this area here, where the Ukrainians can actually attack. So let's see how this goes. And the Russians also launched an airstrike at the Snake Island on the 24th of September. They used a Sukhoi 24M and thrown 2 FAP 500 bombs, 500 kg bombs at the Snake Island, and the aim is actually to destroy the logistic base that is being set up on the island that is used by the Ukrainians to conduct their amphibious assault. So yeah, so they managed to bomb 2 strikes, but it's probably not going to stop the Ukrainians from continuing to deploy that. And there's also further information. The Russians again has struck this airport at Kryvyi Rih. This time around, yet another MiG-29 was hit by this drone or missile. I think it's a drone. So again, there is drone footages from the Russian side that is actually looking at this attack, and then successfully they hit another MiG-29. So the idea that the lightning does not hit twice does not apply in war. So it indeed had hit twice. According to further information from Ryba, there was also some rumors or information that the Russians have struck the airport at Mykolaiv. So there is not much information about this, except that there was some strike on this airport at Mykolaiv. So that's that. And we move on into the southern front. In the Kherson front, we have further information from Ryba, the pro-Russian source, reporting that the Ukrainian forces are still at Kozaksky Island. That's about it. It's not much. It's just acknowledge that the presence are still there. Previously, the Russian Defense Ministry says that they have wiped out this force, but apparently no, they did. The forces are still there. So yeah, moving on into the Zaporizhia front. At the Zaporizhia front, at the Orikhiv sector, the Ukrainian forces continue their offensive towards Novoprokopivka and Verbove, as well as some forces attacking Kopani. So the one at Kopani consistently is only mentioned by Maroshinikov. He continued to report that the Ukrainian forces from the 24th to 25th is trying to attack Kopani and to expand on the flanks as well as on the eastern part of Novoprokopivka. So Maroshinikov reported this only on the 25th. On the 24th and 25th, he mentioned about Kopani. And then the Ukrainian forces continued their attack near south of Robotine. Maroshinikov mentioned about this, about the Ukrainians having some success in pushing forward at Robotine. And Ryba on the 25th also acknowledged that there was continued assault in the area of Robotine. And however, it's important to note that the Ryba actually report it as fighting near Robotine rather than near Novoprokopivka. So that distinction is pretty important, which means that the fighting is still probably still around this area here. Geolocation of Russian assault over at this area by Dnipro Osin suggests that the Russians are attacking, continuing their attack towards Robotine, and this fighting is also reported by Maroshinikov about the Russians counterattacking against Robotine. Otherwise, we have some geolocations on the western part of Robotine, which helps us confirm that Ukrainians continue to hold positions that is protecting the village. And there is geolocation of Ukrainian forces reaching this bun house or this warehouse area here. It's only 2 soldiers, but these are also just shows that the Ukrainians have already reached very near, and they can conduct an assault into the first buildings of Novoprokopivka. However, this in the video footage which went viral, the 2 soldiers was killed by a Russian soldier that actually hit them from behind over this area here. I mentioned this in a quick update. You probably can check that out. And so otherwise, we don't have a lot about Novoprokopivka. Only Maroshinikov mentioned about this. And no one else is actually not talking much about the fighting at Novoprokopivka. In fact, if you ignore Maroshinikov, the entire front line at Robotine looks like it's entirely went into a very static stage. So there is some geolocation of Ukrainian forces by Kremlin Caprice on the western part of Verbove, and there are further geolocation of Ukrainian forces this time round back at this tree line. So which means the Ukrainian forces have managed to to attack and managed to capture this tree line again, and capture this from the Russian forces, which probably withdrawn into the village itself. There is also geolocation of Ukrainian forces just on the road here. This seems like armored vehicles by the of the Ukrainians retreating from maybe from a raid into the village, maybe doing some fire raid against the Russian forces that is defending the town. And he probably hit the mine or gotten hit by the anti-tank guided missile, and there's a big explosion. So that's basically the footage that we've seen in this geolocation. But it does show that the front line has arrived at the very edge of the town again. Most of the reports coming from Ukrainian Defense Ministry, Maroshinikov, Russian Defense Ministry, and Ryba, all talking about from the 23rd to the 25th, the Ukrainian forces has been continuing their assault at Verbove. So previously they were focusing attack southward. It seems like they stopped this attack and they're now focusing on Verbove again. So maybe it was a change of direction, realizing that going south this way have no strategic importance, and there is no PR victory as well. So maybe they are refocusing their effort into capturing Verbove. So that's possibly what is happening right now for the Ukrainians. It is very difficult for the Ukrainians because this salient is actually extremely difficult to hold, extremely difficult to assault, and they have to find a location where they can actually justify all these sacrifices that they have made. And so capturing Verbove, to me, as well as Novoprokopivka, is the ultimate objective for this offensive. They have to do it before the muddy season comes. So far, it seems like after some bit of rain, it's still not very muddy yet. So there only some bit, but that was previous week. So things are looking okay, and Ukrainian forces still have a chance to continue to do their assault until autumn comes. Moving on from the Orikhiv sector, we move into the Huaypole sector. At the Huaypole sector, we have some geolocation just northeast of Zahirne of Ukrainian forces, and as well as in the northeastern part of Dorozhenka, or actually western part of Mariupol. So this helped us to confirm that Ukrainian forces nearby, as well as changing the front line just off Zahirne. So we can change the front line to make sure that we have the as good as possible front line gauge we have around this region here. There is some recon forces that was engaged by the Russian forces near Mariupol, and on this reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. So this probably is nothing. The Ukrainian forces is just probing and see where the Russian forces are holding their lines. And that's all from the Huaypole sector. We move on to the Velika Novosilka sector. At the Velika Novosilka sector, the Ukrainian forces has launched some attack near Uruzhaine. So this attack was against a Russian trench, which was highlighted by the Russian Defense Ministry to show the heroics of a soldier. And so it's probably just some positional kind of thing. So nothing, it's not some major assault, but yeah, it is interesting that one soldier held off one entire squad in the trench warfare, because in trench warfare, fog of war is very thick. You don't really know who you are fighting with. So the Ukrainian forces gave up after a while, and after they used up all their grenades, they realized that okay, we have no more grenades, let's not fight. Then they went back. There is some geolocation of Ukrainian forces at this position by Crimea Caprice, and this allow us to confirm that the Russian forces have actually withdrawn from this tree line, and to establish a straightened front line on the eastern part of Uruzhaine. So the Ukrainian forces have basically taken over this tree line after the Russian withdrawal. So there is some sort of progress from the Ukrainians on this eastern part of Uruzhaine. We move on further into the Donetsk front. At the Donetsk front, we have no fighting being reported at the Novodonetsk and Novomayosk region, further confirming that the entire offensive has been abandoned. And we move to the eastern part of Voleda region. There is a geolocation by Crimea Caprice just off on the western part of Soloke, which shows that Ukraine at this position help us to clean up our front line a bit, which is actually pretty good, which means that the DPA US mapping is actually very, very accurate, because so far all this geolocation only help us to change the front line that seems to adjust the Russian side to align with what the Ukrainians have reported. So that's actually very illuminating. Over at the Marinka region, we have fighting being reported in the Novo-Mikhailivka region by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 25th. Boyeda actually see fighting for the first time in a very, 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 very long time on the 23rd of September, reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry that the Russians attacked in the Boyeda region. And then as usual, we have the fighting at Marinka, reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry across all 3 days from the 23rd to the 25th of September. The Ukrainian forces did conduct a counteroffensive on the 24th, and that's about it. Geolocation in the northern side of Marinka shows that the Ukrainian forces seems to hold some position in this western part of the northern part of Marinka, and that's about it from Marinka. Over at the Krasnohorivka, north of Marinka, we have information coming from Dnipro-Osin, the pro-Ukrainian source, confirming that the Russian forces have recaptured Trudovskaya mine, which is over here. So the Russian forces have managed to recapture this position. Further geolocation of Russian forces has been located over here, confirming that the Russian forces do have continue to have positions very, very close to Krasnohorivka, and this This didn't change the front line for us, but actually just helped to confirm that the Russians are still around here. And we move on to the Adiyevka front. This is the Adiyevka front. At the Adiyevka front, we have geolocation of multiple geolocations of Ukrainian forces on the northwestern part of Opitne, and this helps. This actually changed the front line to show that the Ukrainian forces actually pretty much surrounded the Opitne region, and the Ukrainian forces previously did have some very good offensive in this region that managed to really encircle the Opitne quite a bit. And moving on from Opitne, there's no fighting reported here except by the Russian Defense Ministry. They say that there's some fighting over in the Khimik region, which is actually this area here of Adiyevka, pretty far away from the front line. So not sure exactly what that means. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry say that there is a Russian offensive on the 24th, and that's about it. The Russian Defense Ministry actually acknowledged that, also saying that there is some fighting. They say that they defended against the Ukrainians on the 24th. So both say that they are defending. So you can decide who you want to believe. Over at the Vasily region on the northern part of Adiyevka, there is geolocation by Dnipro showing that the Russian forces have positioned around here. And this actually showed that the Russians have a much better buffer zone for this village here. And there is reports of the Ukrainians actually tried to attack this village of Vasily on the 24th of September. Given that it's only one day, it's probably very unsuccessful. There is also the same fighting being reported on the 24th of September on Krasnohorivka as well, reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. Similarly, it's a one-day thing, so nothing to shout about. And that's all from the Adiyevka front. We move on into the Bakhmut front. This is Bakhmut city, and in the most southern point of Bakhmut front, we have fighting reported at Mayos on the 25th of September reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. Not much to talk about. There's no much details being mentioned about here, other than I already mentioned quite a few times. This is a very strategically important town for Russia, and over at Ozeryanivka, we have fighting reported from the 23rd to the 25th, and there is fighting at Kudyomivka as well from the 23rd to the 25th as well. Information all coming from Myroshnikov. Only him is very interested about the fighting in this area here. There is geolocation of Ukrainian forces very near to Kudyomivka by Creamy Caprice on the 23rd of September, showing that the Ukrainians indeed have positions at this canal region, which means the Russians are pretty much keeping their positions within the settlement itself. There is another further geolocation of Ukrainian forces by Creamy Caprice on the 25th of September, just east of Dilievka, around here. So it does confirm that the Ukrainians are pretty much have control all around this region here, which then makes the Ukrainian Defense Ministry report about fighting near Bilohora. You say on the southeastern part of Bilohora, a bit of a stretch. Because why would they say that? They could have just said Kudyomivka, right? So very weird way of reporting. Over at the further up north, Andrievka also continued to see fighting from the 23rd to the 24th. Myroshnikov and Ryba mentioned about the Ukrainian forces continue their attack in this region here. And this also have geolocation of Russian forces on the eastern part of Andrievka. By Dnipro, the pro-Ukrainian source reporting the Russians to be here, thus confirming that at least the Russians are still in these areas here defending the Andrievka region. There is geolocation of Ukrainian forces by military summary showing the Ukrainian forces on the railway line, which means that they have pretty much controlled the three lines around here north of Andrievka. Which means that the Russians are pretty much more or less pushed out of this region here as the Russians shell this position with artillery. And over at the Klishchievka region, there is fighting reported on the eastern part of Klishchievka, reported by Myroshnikov and Ryba, as where the Ukrainian forces are still trying to push to the railway line. Geolocation of Ukrainian forces along the tree line on the eastern part of Klishchievka on the 23rd of September by Creamy Caprice also show that the Ukrainian forces have pushed out to the flank of Klishchievka to control more buffer zones around Klishchiivka, and but most of the information about Klishchiivka is by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, reporting that the Russians are conducting counteroffensive against Klishchiivka. Until the 25th of September, Ryba actually reported about this. So talking about heavy fighting continuing in this region here. So it's not sure the fighting at Klishchiivka referring to only in the north, or actually also talking about any fighting on the eastern part of Klishchiivka. This is quite unclear. There is a Ukrainian Mi-8 shot down over Klishchiivka. This is the first helicopter that we have seen shot down for quite some time, I guess. I can't remember the last one, maybe a week or 2 weeks ago. So Ukrainian Air Force has been adapted pretty well to the reality of war. So shoot downs have been a lot more rare in these few months compared to the first year of the war. Moving to the northern part of the Bakhmut front, the northern flank, we have Myroshnikov reporting that they are putting pressure on Berkivka. They are putting pressure on the Russian forces at Berkivka. However, Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported on the 24th that it is the Russians that is attacking on the eastern part of Bodanivka. So this reported on the 23rd, this reported on the 24th. So not exactly sure what is happening. And talking about eastern part of Bodanivka, again, they could have just said Yakhine, on the western part of Yakhine or near Berkivka, but they chose to say eastern part of Bodanivka. So it's a very, very awkward way of writing. I'm not even sure if the Russians actually have this salient like this. I don't think so, because Deep State UA has not even mapped out in that way. So the front line did not change actually around this area here. There is also fighting reported at Zeleniansky, according to the Myroshnikov, the pro-Ukrainian source, reporting on the 23rd of September about Ukrainians attacking Zeleniansky. But given that this is a one-day thing, it is probably just one small skirmish. We move on into the Sivers front. This is Sivers. At the Sivers front, there is fighting reported at Yakovlivka on the 23rd, according to Myroshnikov, and there is fighting reported at Berestove on the 25th, Spurny on the 25th by the Russian Defense Ministry as well, and over at Bilohorivka in the Luhansk region, in the Sivers front, Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 23rd said the Russians launched an attack on Bilohorivka. All these things are so far one day. Spurny and Berestove, we shall continue to see whether this is a sustained thing, because it's only reported yesterday. Maybe today they will continue to report that it's consistent. Myroshnikov mentioned so many locations. Sometimes I also do doubts whether is it true or not, since no one else is talking about it. But yeah, we shall see. And the Bilohorivka one confirmed is just a one-off thing. Didn't continue. We move on into the Crimea front. At the Crimea front, the Ukrainian forces continue to be on the offensive in the Serbranski Forestry on the 24th of September. It's a one-day thing. On the 25th, the fighting is reported in the north of Dibrova, and that's very surprising, because the front line was actually around here. Suddenly, the fighting is being reported in the northern area of Dibrova. That shows that the Ukrainians might have made some breakthrough in this region here, causing the Russians to be fighting over in the northern part. But we shall see whether if this is sustained, or if there is any updates that can show that the Ukrainians actually made a breakthrough in this northern part of the Dibrova region. Geolocation is reported in the west of Terny. With the geolocation help us to confirm that the Russians actually stayed more or less along the Luhansk Oblast border. Previously, we have this triangle like that, showing that the Russians were attacking westward, but geolocations now shows that the front line have not really changed. We move on from the Crimea front into the Sviatove front. At the Sviatove front, there is geolocation of Russian forces by Dnipro Osin on the 23rd of September on the western part of Kovalivka, around here, east of Novoyehorivka. Pretty much nothing, just to show that the Russians are still around here. So at least they are still in this position here, protecting Kovalivka. The fighting over at the Novoyehorivka region, in this region here, has died down. We don't really have any reports of fighting over there. Instead, the fighting is actually in Novoselivsky. So we Ukrainian forces, since we have geolocated them inside, have further geolocation in the northern part, showing that they are here as well as in the southern outskirt, which means that the Ukrainian forces are making very good progress at Novoselivsky, and this is likely to come back into a recapture of Novoselivsky by the Ukrainian forces probably within a week, and the Russian forces is going to waste their previous effort of capturing Novoselivsky, and they're gonna grind it out again over at this region here. We move into the Kupiansk front. At the Kupiansk front, there is no fighting being reported except that there is a geolocation of Ukrainian forces by Crimea Caprice on the 23rd of September, showing the Ukrainians are still in positions and control of Sinkivka. And that's it from the Kupiansk front. And so this is the summary for the day of 577 to 579 for the 23rd to 25th of September. So just to do some conclusions, the Russian forces continue to suffer from missile strikes by the Ukrainians, and it looks like despite all the air defense system that the Russians have, it's still not enough to prevent hits onto certain targets that the Ukrainians have been trying to hit. And the Ukrainians also continue to use the oil rigs that is just west of Crimea, and are able to continue to launch amphibious assault. And the assault is getting more and more daring, and they actually get into the firefight, but they did not land. So that is a very interesting thing that is happening. And the Russia reacted by bombing the Snake Island with the fat bombs, the 500 kg bombs. So this attrition on the Black Sea will definitely continue, with the Ukrainians already pretty much deny the Russians this entire part of the Black Sea. So no Russian vessels will dare to enter this area here, lest they want to be destroyed by anti-ship missiles. So the Ukrainians, that's why, have this free reign to land along this area here. And then the Russian Navy pretty much can only sail on the outside. But it doesn't change the fact that the Russians still have air superiority in the region. And then lightning strike twice over at the Kryvyi air base, where yet another missile strike or drone strike destroyed another MiG-29 that was landing. That was actually parking in one of these parking lots. So that's actually quite disturbing, I think, for the Ukrainians to not hit the first warning, and then the Russian forces continue to have a drone flying around here, circling this place, and then launch a missile strike and hit another plane. So this shows some severe problem for the Ukrainians in terms of surface-to-air missile system. They're really lacking surface-to-air missile system to deal with all these missile strike, drone strikes, or drone surveillance, or just Russian aircraft. And this also is reflected over at the airstrike or missile strike on the Mykolaiv air base. So this air base is also known by another name. Tentatively, I cannot remember. It's known by another name, but anyway, it's the Mykolaiv air base. And by Ryba, they reported there was two missiles hitting the airport. Kubakino or Kubakine airport. And all these strikes and drone strikes, missile strikes, or air strikes are just signs that the Ukrainians' surface-to-air missile umbrellas are all disappearing, and this is actually very bad. So which is also why it's reflected by Zelensky, saying that they want more surface-to-air missile. That is a priority for the Ukrainian side. If they know the military aid that they want the most is actually this surface-to-air missile systems. And over at the Orikhiv sector, this is Orikhiv in the Zaporizhia front. This is the Orikhiv sector, and the Ukrainian forces continue their attack against Verbove and Novoprokopivka, as well as on the flanks. And the significance is the breakthrough over on the northeastern or northern outskirt of Novoprokopivka, with the Ukrainians managed to touch the settlement. They have not actually captured any buildings just yet, but the fact that we have a confirmation through video footage that they have managed to come to so close, able to send troops into these first buildings, that shows that the Ukrainians are continuing to make progress. And however, the Russians also shown in video on geolocations that the Russians are continuing to counterattack towards Robotine. So the situation have not changed in this place. The situation, however, changed over on the Verbove region, with the Ukrainian forces managed to be geolocated over here, which means that they have more or less captured this final tree line, which then they can actually launch assault into the village. And geolocation of armored vehicle getting destroyed on this road here is a Ukrainian armored vehicle, but it was destroyed by probably a mine or anti-tank missile. That shows that the Ukrainian forces have already reached more or less the outskirts, and they are ready to attack into Verbove itself. The Russian forces definitely is now holding their positions within the village right now. I'm not sure if they will do a counter attack to recapture this tree line again. So we shall continue to monitor if this is the case, where the Ukrainians are able to enter Verbove. Once they can fight into Verbove, I think that will make a lot of difference, rather than staying out in the open and then get hit by all sort of artillery and airstrikes. So there is some progress for the Ukrainians over the past 3 days, but it's not very big. It's a little bit, but better than nothing. Otherwise, we don't have a lot more that is very significant, I would say. In terms of the fighting, I would say Marinka is there is some important detail. Is the geolocation of Ukrainian forces in the northern part of Crimea that shows that the Ukrainian forces do have a pretty decent holding positions in the northwestern part of the Marinka region. The Ukrainian forces continue to defy belief. They are able to continue to hold this final portion of Marinka. After this long, I'm very, very impressed. Russian forces recaptured this mine, and they call it a mine. And but there's no Moria. The Russian forces managed to recapture this position with geolocation of other Ukrainian Russian forces over there. They are continuing to hold positions just off Krasnohorivka. And otherwise, Crimea, Adivka front, nothing much to talk about. South Bakhmut is there's fighting at Kodyomivka, at Ozeryanivka, at NGFka. That nothing actually is working out. Everything is stuck. The Russians continue to counterattack at Klishchevka, also stuck. There's no change in terms of the front line. Ukraine is also trying to attack into the eastern part of Klishchevka, also stuck. Nothing really much to shout about. Otherwise, Ukrainians continue to attack in the forest. The big breakthrough is the Russian Defense Ministry reported on the 25th of September, saying that the Ukrainian forces actually broke through, actually attacked. They were fighting in the northern part of Dibrova. So fighting in the northern part of Dibrova is weird because the front line is actually here. So for them to be fighting in the northern part means that the Ukrainians actually have a breakthrough, and the Russian forces have to actually push them back and repel this attack. I'm not sure if the Ukrainians managed to hold a position in the northern part of Dibrova now. So let's continue to monitor and see if the fighting continues to be reported in the northern part of Dibrova. If it is, then Ukrainians actually made a breakthrough, and actually that would be quite significant, because if the Ukrainians able to hold a position in the northern part of Dibrova, they can actually cut this road, and they can actually push out from this area here, and go towards Kuzmine from the south, from the rear, and they can actually just avoid fighting in the Serebryansky forestry entirely. So let's see how this goes. Otherwise, there's nothing much to talk about. Oh yeah, there's this Novoselivsky. So in the Novoselivsky, geolocation over here, and geolocation over here means that the Ukrainian forces continue to make tremendous progress at Novoselivsky in this counter-offensive, and the Russian forces continue to be pushed back into Kuzemivka. So I think not long we shall see the Ukrainians recapture the entire town of Novoselivsky. So that's it for, I think that's it for the the most important things in that happened over the past 3 days in Ukraine. Do press the like button, subscribe. If you want to watch the full SITREP, do join the YouTube membership or be part of Patreon, Coffee, or all the description in the links below in the description. Yeah, so that's about it, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.